Welcome back. Now, the country is ravaged by drought, with over 13 counties being flagged as at emergency stage as food insecure. Now, on set, we are joined by Saidi Mkomwa. He is the Executive Director of African Conservation Tillage Network to discuss matters food security. Welcome to the set, Mr. Mkomwa.
Thank you very much, Betty.
Okay, we can just dive in. The country has food secure and food insecure regions. Where is the problem?
Well, let me start by first thanking KBC for the opportunity to invite ACT to contribute to this food security debate. In my view, the main challenge is not emphasizing enough on rain-fed agriculture, dry land farming, that is to say. And I think what I can say right away is we have the opportunity to make Kenya food secure, and even to reduce the ravages of the drought by emphasizing more on rain-fed agriculture using conservation agriculture, which is a no-till based farming system.
Yeah, when we talk about the county, there are counties that have enough food. They have sufficient food, more like they even have surplus. And other counties, people are starving. What can be done to ensure that there is enough distribution?
The distribution pertains to the distribution network of the food itself. So one of the issues is getting the food transported to the food deficient areas. But the bigger issue there is to emphasize that food be produced where it's needed most, that we get the production in the drier areas, which do not have that much provision for irrigation, to also produce food. And it's possible. The different partners have proven that it's possible to turn the semi-arids into grain baskets by emphasizing on rain-fed agriculture.
How is this done?
This is done by what we call no-till or conservation agriculture farming. It's basically a systems approach to farming whereby we no longer plow the land. Instead, we use different technologies to open up a small opening in the soil, place the seed and fertilizer, and maintain the fertility of the soil by using crop residues or different soil cover. And it's not a new technology. It was started in the United States in the 30s when tillage-based agriculture resulted to the Dust Bowls. It's a technology that is expanding fast in the world at the rate about 10 million hectares worldwide. It's a technology that is already here in Kenya, and we don't need to go to the US or to Australia to learn. We just need to look at the very successful cases right here in Kenya to amplify and scale up those models.
Maybe you can localize it for us. How can you work on that technology in the arid and semi-arid lands?
Well, it's happening right here in Kenya, as I was saying. There are smallholder farmers right here in Kenya, in Laikipia, in Nakuru, and other counties which are fairly dry, who are doing it by not plowing the land, using small implements like jab planters, animal drawn equipment like the no-till seeders or two-wheel tractor equipment. But we also have large-scale farmers who are farming in a very commercial way. Farming has become a business, and they are successful because they are using no-till agriculture, having failed to become economically viable with the conventional way of farming using tillage-based methods. So, as I said earlier, we don't need to go that far. We can just learn from the experiences right here in Kenya. The network that I work for, ACT, has been working with different partners in Kenya, like AGRA, like the European Union and FAO, the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, to research, to promote and to support farmers who are trying to adapt and adopt that technology.
Let's talk about water management. Year in, year out, we hear floods, and then after that, it's drought. How can we manage our water better?
It's basically how we manage our soils. The bulk of the rainfall that falls it goes back again into the sky as evaporation, but a substantial amount of it will run off as soil erosion, simply because the land is badly treated. The land is barren when the rain start to fall. The soils have no vegetative cover, so most of that water is not able to infiltrate and be stored in the soil. So it runs off, and that runs off results into flooding. With conservation agriculture, whereby the soil is not plowed and covered with residues, the little moisture that falls it infiltrates into the soil, it's stored in the soil, making it available for plant growth. And as I said earlier, it has been proven right here in Kenya that you can easily double crop yields by storing the little rain that falls into the soil instead of allowing it to run off into the rivers and eventually into the Indian Ocean.
What can be done in these arid areas to ensure that water collection is sufficient?
Water collection is important because irrigation is important, but irrigation is not feasible everywhere in Kenya. So there are areas where there is adequate water, and in those areas we need to emphasize the irrigation schemes. But we all know very well that these are heavy investment schemes, so they are not. The government is not able to make each and every farmer in Kenya have access to irrigation schemes, and that's why we need to go to the second best option, which is now the rain-fed agriculture using conservation agriculture systems. So with the conservation agriculture, which incorporates, is a system, so it incorporates the no-till, it incorporates covering the soil with crop residues or some even vegetative trees, and also practicing crop rotations. That system enables farmers, it empowers farmers to be able to increase their yields. What I can say is that this is a systems approach and a complete paradigm shift. So it requires substantial capacity building of the farmers to understand the technology. It requires engagement with the research institutions like CARO, which ACT is doing currently, so that research is focused on how to address the challenges that farmers will encounter as they start practicing this technology. It also requires building the knowledge base so that farmers can access different knowledge sources. As they encounter the challenges, they should have options on how to address those opportunities. And finally, linking not only the farmers, but the service providers, those who are providing the mechanization services, linking them to available equipment, available machinery that can do the no-till seeding most efficiently on the farmers' fields.
Okay, do you think that Kenyans should diversify their food intake?
Yes, they should diversify, but again, that goes to personal needs. What needs to be diversified is by adopting conservation agriculture, we are enabling farmers to diversify their enterprises. Some of the farmers we have worked with, a smallholder farmer, for example, in Nakuru, called Pauline Mugambi, by adopting conservation agriculture, she was able to save so much time, and she utilized this time now to diversify to dairy. She utilized the manure from the dairy to make biogas, and that diversification of enterprises enables the smallholder farmers on small plots of land to become economically viable and to have different income sources.
Okay. And for the people who are wondering, why is there food in other counties? What is like? Is it the infrastructure?
Infrastructure is one, but as you know, the weather is not is different. The northern part of Kenya is much drier, so it requires more drier, rain-fed type of agriculture compared to the southern part, which is has better rainfall. What we are saying is we can even make these drier areas, wherever farming is done, conservation agriculture has the potential to make farming better there and more viable. And again, as I said earlier, yes, we can transport the food to the most needy. It needs to be transported there. But in the longer term, the most sustainable option is to produce the food closer to the consumers, is to empower these smallholder farmers to produce their own food using rain-fed methods, which are more cost-effective than compared to the bigger irrigated infrastructure.
Okay. What about the markets for the farmers?
The markets for the farmers can be challenging, particularly if they stick to producing maize and maize and maize. So what we are advising the farmers is to diversify their enterprises. If we have surplus maize, why shouldn't you start a dairy like the lady I was talking about? And your surplus maize now can be used as dairy meal. Why shouldn't you start a poultry so that your surplus maize can be converted into chicken feed? And the bigger picture is to advise farmers not to produce as is by tradition, but to look at what the market demands. Above all, what we are saying is with the conservation agriculture, the production costs are substantially reduced, which means a farmer might produce a bag of maize at maybe 1,500 shillings, which makes them more competitive in the current, even given the current government price of maize. So without reducing the production cost, people complain that the government should increase the purchase price of the maize. But I think that is the wrong end. Let us look at how can we reduce the production cost so that the farmers become more competitive.
So you're saying it's about reducing the production cost?
Absolutely. And the system we are talking about is promoted first and foremost by the large-scale farmers because of that huge benefit.
What you've said, do you think it will help in opening up the rural markets?
Rural markets, I think Kenya is doing very well in terms of rural markets. I think there is a very vibrant marketing system, and the infrastructure is not that bad. So what is I think missing is to make the production costs of the farmers less, to make them more competitive, and so that when they send their produce to the market, they have a bigger markup.
But it's not only maize that is being bought right now at low prices. The general cost of buying is low, but the general cost of food, or rather the living standard of the Kenyan, is very high.
Well, I wouldn't want that the food prices be reduced. I think it's better for the farmers when the food prices are higher. What is missing is how do we reduce the production cost of the farmer so that they earn that margin, they convert that difference into a profit for them. And so my message is to reduce the production cost, make sure that the vulnerability, the failure of crop production because of drought is reduced by moving to more resilience production systems like conservation agriculture.
Okay. For irrigation, the current irrigation schemes that are there, what is the place of maybe expanding them to accommodate more acres to produce more food, as well as what more can government do in terms of irrigation?
As I said earlier, not every part in the country will benefit from irrigation schemes because the value for money, it costs about $4,000 to $10,000 to rehabilitate 1 hectare and bring it under irrigation. The conservation agriculture systems I'm talking about, we are talking of $600 to $1,000. So it's 1/4 of the cost. And what the government needs to look in my view, is that even the existing huge irrigation schemes, the efficiency of water utilization is still low. There is still a need to look at how that water and these irrigation schemes can be stretched over larger hectareages by utilizing conservation agriculture in those schemes.
Okay.
We also, we also need to look at do we irrigate, do we support 5 million hectares expecting a 5% increase in yield, or 1 million hectares expecting a 25% increase in yield, or 500,000 hectares expecting a 50% increase, because the overall gain is the same, but the number of beneficiaries will be different, and certainly the stretch on the targeting will also be different.
Okay, so you're saying conservation agriculture is the answer to food insecurity in this country?
It is the answer. It's happening right here in Kenya as I'm talking. While it hasn't rained for the past 3 months, there are farmers in Nakuru who have planted a crop. It has germinated using just the residual soil moisture. So we have champions right in here in Kenya, and we should utilize those lessons. We need to support the national research institutions so that the unanswered questions are clearly defined. We need to support these smallholder farmers to acquire the technology, to acquire the equipment, so that we have not 200,000, but 1 million or 2 million farmers in Kenya practicing conservation agriculture.
Okay. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we had to discuss this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Betty.
Okay, thank you. That was Saidi Mkomwa. He is the Executive Director, African Conservation Tillage Network, discussing matters food security and how we can use conservation agriculture to end the perennial food insecurity in the country.